A year after a 14-year-old girl sent a letter to Sam Cooke, the letter arrived. It had been lost in misdirected mail, passed from office to office, sitting in piles that nobody had gotten to yet. Sam's manager found it in a stack of old correspondence and brought it to the hotel room after the show. Sam opened it. He read about a sick father. He read about records played every night. He read the last line, "If this ever reaches you, will you tell him we love him?" And he put the letter down. And then he picked up a pen, and he wrote back. The girl's name was written at the bottom of the letter in the same careful handwriting as the rest. Eleanor, age 14, with an address in a small town in Tennessee. The letter was dated 14 months earlier. She had apologized twice before she even explained why she was writing. First for taking his time, then for asking a favor from someone she had never met. She explained that she knew he was busy and that she would understand if he couldn't respond. And then, after all that, she told him about her father. Her father's name was Robert. He had been sick for 2 years, a condition that had started slowly and then progressed in the way that certain illnesses progress, taking things away gradually at first and then more quickly until the list of what remained was shorter than the list of what was gone. He had been a carpenter. He had built things with his hands for 30 years, houses, furniture, small repairs that kept other people's lives functioning, and had found in that work the particular satisfaction of someone who makes things that last. He could not do that anymore. The hands were there, but the strength was not, and the strength was what the work required. What he could still do, what the illness had not taken and showed no signs of taking, was listen. Every evening, without exception, Eleanor wrote, he put on Sam Cooke's records. She had tried to find the right words for what happened when he did. She had written and rewritten that part of the letter more than the rest, crossing out phrases that weren't quite right, searching for the thing she was trying to say. She wrote that it was the part of the day he seemed most like himself, that something happened to his face when the music started, something she could see but couldn't fully name, that the records had become, over the 2 years of his illness, the one reliable thing that gave him back something the illness had taken. She did not know what to call the thing, she just knew it was there. She had not asked for much. She understood, she wrote, that Sam Cooke performed in large venues, and that tickets were expensive, and that there were many people who wanted to see him. She was not asking for anything special. She was asking if there was any way at all, that her father could hear Sam sing, in person, once. And then the last line, written in slightly smaller handwriting than the rest, as if she had added it after she thought the letter was finished and had run out of space. "If this ever reaches you, will you tell him we love him?" Sam put the letter down on the hotel bed beside him. He sat with it for a long time. The room was quiet, the specific quiet of a hotel room after a show, when the energy of the evening has dissipated, and what remains is the stillness of a space that belongs to nobody in particular. He read the letter again. He sat with the last line for a while. Then he picked up the pen.
What Sam wrote back was not long. He was not a man who used more words than a thing required. He thanked Eleanor for writing. He told her that her letter had reached him. Late, yes, considerably late, but it had reached him. He told her he was sorry it had taken so long to arrive, that this was not her fault, that letters sometimes went missing, and this one had, and that he was glad it had finally found its way. He sat for a moment before he wrote the next part. Not because he was uncertain about what to say. He knew, had known from the moment he finished reading the letter, what the response needed to contain. He sat because he wanted to write it correctly, because Eleanor had written her letter carefully, with attention to every word, and the response deserved the same care. He told her that he had 2 tickets for his upcoming show in Nashville, which was the closest city to her town on his current tour schedule, approximately 40 miles away, and that he would like her father to have them. Not in the front row, he explained, because the front row was loud and the bass was heavy, and he did not know what her father's condition allowed for, but close enough to hear everything clearly, in a section where her father could sit comfortably for the duration of the show, without being pressed by the crowd on either side. He asked her to write back and confirm the address so the tickets could be sent by courier without delay. He signed it, Sam. He did not mention the last line of her letter directly. He did not address it by name or quote it back to her. But at the very end of his note, after the signature, after everything else had been said, he added one more line, small like hers had been, written in slightly different ink, as if he had added it after a moment of thought. He knows.
Eleanor wrote back the same day she received Sam's letter. Her reply was 2 paragraphs, the address confirmed, a sentence explaining the best time for a courier to arrive, and a final sentence that said only, "I don't know how to thank you for this. I will try to find a way." The tickets arrived 3 days later. Eleanor held them for a long time before she showed them to her father. She had been thinking, since Sam's letter came, about how to present them, about the right moment, the right context, the right way to give her father something this large without making it feel like more than he could hold. She had been worried, in the way that people who love someone sick become expert at worrying, about whether the anticipation of something so significant might cost him something he could not afford to spend. She had spoken to his doctor, who had said that the trip was feasible if they were careful, that joy was not something to be rationed even in illness, that the question was always what a person needed rather than what was merely safest. She showed him the tickets on a Tuesday evening after dinner while his records were playing. She did not preface it with an explanation or a story. She simply put them on the table in front of him and waited. Robert looked at the tickets for a long time without touching them. Then he picked one up and held it. He read every detail, the venue, the date, the section, the seat number, with the slow, careful attention of someone reading something important enough to require that kind of reading. He put it back down, and then he looked at his daughter. The expression on his face was one she had not seen in a very long time, not the careful, managed expression of a man who had learned to live within the boundaries the illness had drawn around his life. Something older than that, something before the illness, from the part of him that the illness had reduced but not erased. She recognized it from childhood, from the face he made when something happened that exceeded what he had allowed himself to expect. He said, "How?" Eleanor told him about writing the letter 14 months ago, about not hearing back and eventually quietly stopping the waiting, about the letter sitting in a pile of misdirected mail for over a year, making its slow way through offices and forwarding addresses until Sam's manager found it in a stack of old correspondence and brought it to a hotel room, about Sam reading it that night, about Sam writing back. Robert listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "He wrote back." Eleanor said, "He wrote back." Robert picked up the ticket again. He held it the way he had once held the pieces of wood he was about to work with, the specific attention of a craftsman who understands that what is in his hands is going to become something more than what it currently is. He said, "I want to go." Eleanor said, "I know. We're going."
On the night of the show, Eleanor drove the 40 miles to Nashville with her father in the passenger seat. He had dressed carefully for the occasion, his best jacket, the one he wore to church, which fit differently than it used to because he was thinner now, but which he had pressed the night before with the specific attention of someone for whom the gesture of dressing properly still meant something, still signified that what was about to happen deserved to be met with care. He had been ready an hour early. Eleanor had found him sitting in the kitchen in his jacket, his hands folded in his lap, waiting in the specific way of someone who has been given something to wait for and has decided to wait for it properly.
She had sat down across from him and they had talked about nothing in particular. The weather, a neighbor's new dog, something she had read in the paper, and the conversation had been easy in a way that conversations between them had not always been easy in the 2 years of his illness. The tickets were in his jacket pocket. He had put them there himself that morning. The drive took 40 minutes. The highway was clear. Robert watched the landscape through the passenger window, the fields and the small towns and the gradual thickening of the surroundings as they approached the city with the attentiveness of someone cataloging things they want to remember. Eleanor did not ask him what he was thinking. She drove and he watched, and the 40 miles passed in a comfortable quiet. The venue was larger than anything in their town. Eleanor had been to the city before, but never to a hall like this. The scale of it, the crowd already filling the lobby when they arrived, the particular warmth of hundreds of people converging on the same place for the same reason. She stayed close to her father, watching him navigate the space carefully, the way he moved through everything now, deliberately, conserving what he had, making each step count. People moved around them without knowing anything about the best jacket or the 40 miles or the letter that had taken 14 months to arrive. The crowd was just the crowd, but Eleanor knew what it had taken to get here, and she moved through it accordingly. She helped him to their seats, 3rd row, center, exactly where Sam's letter had described, close enough to hear everything clearly, far enough from the front to breathe and to sit without being pressed by the crowd. Robert lowered himself into the seat and looked at the stage, empty still, just the instruments and the lights and the specific quality of anticipation that a stage holds before a show begins, all that waiting, all that potential. His expression was the old one, the one from before. Sam Cooke walked onto the stage, and the room came alive in the way that rooms come alive for very few performers. Not just applause, but something more total, the sound of hundreds of people giving themselves over to what they came for. Robert did not stand. Standing had become difficult, but he leaned forward in his seat, closing the distance between himself and the stage in the only way available to him, and he watched Sam take the microphone.
And then Sam began to sing. And Robert closed his eyes. Eleanor watched her father for most of the show. She watched his face do the thing she had tried to describe in the letter and had not found the right words for. The thing that happened when the music started. The specific change that Sam Cooke's voice produced in a person who needed what it had to offer. She saw it happen in real time, in a concert hall 40 miles from home, in the 3rd row. She saw her father go somewhere the illness had not followed, somewhere it could not reach him. Sam played for 2 hours. He did not know which face in the crowd was Robert's. He did not know about the letter Eleanor had written, or the 40 miles they had driven, or the jacket pressed the night before, or the tickets carried in a pocket all day. He simply sang, the way he always sang, with the full commitment of someone who understood that somewhere in every room there was always a person for whom this particular night was the one that mattered most. He could not know who that person was. He sang for all of them anyway. That was what the singing was for. At the end, Robert opened his eyes. He looked at the stage, then at his daughter, and after a moment he said, "I want to write him a letter." Eleanor said, "Okay." He said, "I want to tell him what the records did, all those evenings. I want him to know." They wrote it together the following week, Robert dictating, Eleanor helping with the words when the ones he wanted didn't come. He told Sam about the evenings, about what the music did that nothing else could do. He tried to find the words for the thing that Eleanor had tried to find the words for in her own letter. He found some of them, not all, but enough to say the true thing in a way that was recognizable as true. He signed it with his full name, and then below the signature, in smaller handwriting, he added one more line. She was right.
you already knew. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe. Every day we tell the stories behind the music, the letters that found their way and the ones that almost didn't. Hit the like button if you believe that it is never too late to reach someone with something true. And tell us in the comments, have you ever written a letter you weren't sure would arrive? Because Eleanor wrote one, it was 14 months late, and Sam Cooke wrote back the same night he read it. We'll see you in the next one.